Good afternoon, everyone, and good evening for those of you who might be in Berlin or Europe or somewhere on the African continent. My name is Dr. Cheryl Finley, and I'm so thrilled today to welcome Yvette Mutumba and Julia Grosse of ContemporaryAnd, a dynamic and transformative platform that has been at it in terms of really shaking up the art world as we know it. We are so excited to invite them to this platform where we, every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time in the United States, have conversations with art world professionals, scholars, writers, curators, students, and museum directors, and many people that are affiliated with our program, the Atlanta University Center Art History and Curatorial Studies Collective. My name is Cheryl Finley, and I am the inaugural director. Our program, which is based at Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University, and also Morehouse College, is the one and only program of its kind that is out to shake up the art world by training, educating, working with, mentoring African American students at the largest consortium of HBCUs in the country and in the world. And Yvette and Julia are coming to us today, and they're going to invite themselves to join me live from Berlin. And I'm super excited to talk to them about the work that they have been doing for the past several years, and how they thought about joining forces to found ContemporaryAnd, which is a platform that many of you probably know. It's ContemporaryAnd.com. It is an online magazine where many people are invited to write and contribute articles about the art world as it relates especially to artists and makers of African descent producing from the continent and globally. And I see you waving. Maybe if you can invite yourself to join me, that would be great. Hey there, Courtney. How is it out there in California? So I just wanted to say that we're really looking forward to talking to them about the ideas behind ContemporaryAnd and the purposes that ContemporaryAnd is serving today as a platform. It's a platform that they have been quoted as saying is also an archive. It's a place where artists and writers of African descent are uplifted and showcased. It's also the kind of platform, too, where it is one that young writers and artists are frequently contributing to their platform. And where the writing is concerned, it's writing that is informed by their deep knowledge of art history and curatorial practice, but it's also type of platform that is informed by wanting to be accessible to many different constituencies, so that the writing that you find addresses and is really agile in the way. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, our internet was a bit stuck, but we're here now.
Yay. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thanks for the invitation.
Yes.
Very happy.
How are you?
Very good. Very good.
Good.
It's early evening here.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Is it hot?
No.
It's so hot here.
Oh, really?
And I had to kind of move place, so I'm happy that we're kind of, starting when we said we would, and that we also have connections, and you all look great, and we can see each other. Thank you so much again for taking this opportunity to speak with me today, Yvette and Julia. I was speaking, I don't know if you could hear in the background as you were about ContemporaryAnd. And I wanted to begin, we were talking yesterday, and I said that, we could do I could read your bio, but I always feel that it's more interesting for our students, especially as a primary audience, and you've gotten to know our summer interns because you spoke with them last week. But for our audience to be able to have a sense of, who you are and how you kind of formed your career trajectories to be at, I think, this really important place in time with the production of a platform like Contemporary and that I think has already done so many transformative things for contemporary African diaspora art globally. But I think it's also poised at this particular moment as there is a reckoning in the world, and especially in the world that relates to our professions, that you are in a position to do so much more. And we're just excited to hear about, your path to where you are now.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we just start briefly by saying that we are both studied art historians as well, and that we were very much maybe shaped and at a certain point annoyed by the European curricula of art history at the time when we studied, which was very focused on Western art history. Yeah. It was already special when we would have seminars that has contemporary art, but I mean, looking beyond anything that was the North American European canon was not really there. And I think this is kind of where we come from, which also means that we always also have to reflect back on how we look at what's happening in terms of artistic production on the continent and the diaspora.
Right.
So I think that's kind of, the starting point maybe.
Yeah. And speaking about that starting point, one of the things I love about it is that we talked about diaspora, right? And we talked about the different ways in which we think about being diasporic peoples. And that your position, especially having studied in Europe, but being based in Berlin, gives a completely different perspective on what I think those of us who are based in the United States might traditionally think of diaspora.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. The interesting thing is that for us, as Yvette mentioned already, we come from, a Western European perspective, had to find our ways as Black Europeans, Black Germans, our ways or position within art history, let's say. And the US has always been a very important focus for us as Afro-Germans, to be honest. And artistic production from the US has been, very interesting and a very interesting and important reference point for us back then. So, and what maybe is interesting is that for us as contemporary and now, the US has always been part of our idea of a global diaspora. So it's not the US and the diaspora, which is Europe, etc., and then it's Africa. So this is maybe something for us always felt very natural because that's how we kind of saw this idea of Africa and the global diaspora. But when we kind of, exchanged more with creatives, cultural producers from the US, we always had the feeling that it's quite an unusual thought. And this was really interesting for us to kind of see, okay, you don't feel like the diaspora. What are you then? Americans
right.
are the diaspora as well. So this was
right.
Always
and I think it was when you pointed that out, and I think, for those of us who, have studied, who studied African diaspora studies, we understand that, that it's a global study, that it's a study that's very much about migration, right? And about how we have all, each in our own way, become part of a diaspora. But I think that you're right. There is often, in speaking with some US-based scholars, even contemporary artists for that matter, that there's this very US-centric focus of, almost as if it's like a different level of the African diaspora in a way, which it's not.
No, absolutely. And I think it's the first, not maybe the first, but the major moment where we noticed that was when we were actually curating a focus of the Armory show in New York.
Yeah.
Which had the focus where we're invited to actually curate a section with galleries from Africa and the diaspora. And it was really interesting to see the feedback that we got, because when we got invited, we thought it's really great. It's nice. It makes total sense.
Is that it?
That's it. Yeah. Exactly. But it was really interesting to get the feedback that a lot of people said, yes, it's great to also see all those galleries from Africa, because we had invited gallery from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, from South Africa, from Lagos. And so it was pretty clear that this connection was maybe somehow abstractly there, but not really had happened in the sense of, you know, getting into connection with the artistic production. And so I think that was also a reason why it got a lot of attention, really, which really surprised us in that sense, because we kind of grew up with what Julia just said, with this notion of
did you say pretension or attention?
Attention. It got a lot of attention. Yeah, it was like it got a lot of attention. Was totally unexpected to us, because we didn't think it would, in a sense, because we always felt like, oh no, but the US is much more ahead of what's happening in Europe, because you have, you know, the Black art histories and narratives and scholars and so on. And of course that is the case, but still bringing it together then with the artistic production in the European diaspora, but also from Africa, suddenly also became another ingrained narrative that was not so clear in a way.
Right.
And
oh, I was just going to say, and the point that you make too, and the reason I asked, did you say attention or pretension? Because I think too, in dealing with the Armory show, you know, and the focus that you had on your exhibition, right? They have this invitational focus every year. They hadn't had it before. And so I think that you're also dealing with, while you're right, yes, you know, scholars of African American, African diaspora, African studies are in the know, but when you deal with the mainstream art world, you know, New York-based mainstream contemporary art world, which is very much in charge of the Armory show, I think that they needed the education that you so generously gave.
And that's what is interesting as well, is that I think many visitors didn't hear or know these galleries from African cities, because they never had the chance to get into these fairs. You know, many of these galleries from Addis Ababa, etc., you know, had the first time chance to, you know, to get a slot in one of these bigger fairs, because, you know, we know from even the big one in South Africa, who tried like year after year to get into Frieze and never had a chance. And now everything is suddenly possible. But like 5 years ago, it was impossible. So that's one reason as well, you know, that suddenly, oh, this is, you know, I've never seen this gallery. Yeah, because they never got a, you know, a slot or a spot in one of these leading art fairs.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it was...
So I wanted to ask, would you say something? There was someone who asked a question about, well, where are your guests from today? And so you're based, both of you now, in Berlin, but you weren't always based in Berlin. Could you maybe say something a little bit more about where you studied, and also maybe done some of your more formative work? And also, I thought maybe it'd be great if we could hear a little bit about what's going on in the Afro-German art scene. I remember being there. I think for the first time I went to Germany was for Oakwey's Documenta in 2002, which was amazing. And that was Kassel, but I made it to Berlin and to a small town called Oberkirchen.
What? Why?
I know, right? Well, so I had
what happened?
Well, a dear friend, Jürgen Heinrichs, who's an art historian at Seton Hall University and an Africanist art historian. He studied with Robert Ferris Thompson, like I did at Yale, and also is a really good friend of Kelly Jones. They were there, and we just kind of got together, and they actually had a plan. I was the one who just arrived, actually, at Documenta. But we had a good time. It was very interesting, actually, to be in that small town and to get to Berlin. And then I later worked on the Paul Gilroy's big Black Atlantic show at the Haus der Kultur und der Welt in 2004. Yes. But I'd just love to hear what's happening now, and just a little bit more about your movement in and around Europe and other parts of the world.
Well, I mean, for me, I'm just going to start.
Yeah.
So I studied art history in Berlin, and I used to work while I was studying also in the contemporary arts field. So I worked for different galleries and art fairs, and then got really to a point where I felt like, this is really problematic, how this is kind of ignorant of things that are happening outside Europe and the US. And so I decided that I wanted to write a PhD. And so I wrote a PhD about contemporary art from Africa and the diaspora in the German cultural context, meaning looking from the 1960s to the 2010 years, what had happened in Germany actually in terms of representation and so on. And it was an interesting moment because it was around 2007 that I actually didn't find anyone in Germany who would supervise me, because it was really a moment where everyone was like, what? Why? What are you going to write about? You know, there's nothing. And, or, you know, people would just say, oh, yes, now she's trying to, you know, figure out her identity issues or things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And were they also thinking about, I was wondering if they might also be thinking about like some of the sort of African Americans who stayed over in Germany, who worked in Germany as artists. Like they probably didn't have a knowledge base for the people that you wanted to write about and that you knew about.
No, exactly. I mean, it was totally not something that would have any sort of presence at the art history institutes at the universities. I mean, and in Germany particularly, I mean, it's only now really very slowly that this is kind of entering the curricula. So I actually went to the UK, to London, because obviously it was very different there. So it was like this kind of revelation for me to go and, you know, have an amazing professor, Annie Coombs, who had been working in this field for a long time. And, you know, just having all these institutions like Innova and so on, and just to delve in. But then it became also very clear to me that actually, as kind of amazing and maybe also freeing it was to enter that discourse, that I actually wanted to go back to Germany to see what can be done to kind of contribute to changing that kind of narrative and perception. And that's why I went then back and first worked at the museum in Frankfurt at the World Cultures Museum, which is a former ethnographic museum. And then actually decided 2016 that I would just like to focus mainly on contemporary and, because it was growing. It became clear that this is what we wanted to focus on, really. So yeah, so that's kind of, maybe, I mean, Julia will confirm that was kind of the vibe when we were studying, that it was.
Did you study together in London?
No.
In the UK?
I studied arts history in the more like western part of Germany, near Cologne, in Bochum, and Bochum was a very, very contemporary art department. So the art history department was super contemporary. You know, they didn't the sessions and seminars didn't stop at 1950s and that's it. So it was really contemporary, etc. But very, very focused on Western artistic practice. So when I did my my MA. On the different readings of Kara Walker's work. So Kara Walker, everyone of you obviously knows her. At this time, I had really exactly the same trouble to find a supervisor as well who would support me here, because nobody knew her work, and thought, okay, why is this important, what she's doing, etc. And I had to go through different departments and finally found a professor in America Studies, yeah?
American Studies,
yeah. And she was cool because she's been teaching in the US for several years and just came back and was so happy to have a young student who was interested in American topics, who and that's why I ended up studying or doing my MA with her, my master's with her, and that was great. And afterwards, in 2005, I moved to London as well, which is really funny because we didn't know each other at the time. No, but it all sounds so similar. And I lived and worked there as an art correspondent and critical art writer until 2013 for all the big art newspapers and art magazines in Germany, focusing on critical art writing. And for me, it was so deliberating as well to go to London, to have an extreme diverse field of artistic producers, from African perspectives, seeing shows which I would never see in Germany, of artists I haven't known before. So it was a bit the same, just like Yvette did, looking for a more diverse art scene than I saw in Berlin or in Frankfurt.
Although, of course, there were a lot of issues also within that scene and still are in the UK, but just in relation to what was happening in Germany, which was basically nothing. It was like, major, step towards much more knowledge and understanding.
But also to have to search for a supervisor, like you said, and that you have to actually go out of your own country, right, and own institution to do that. So, okay, I know. So sometimes, when I ask questions, I already know the answer, but everyone else is.
That's okay. That's so fun about it.
So how did you meet? How did you come up with the idea for Contemporary And?
So sometimes people ask us, you've known each other for 20 years now, haven't you? And then we say, actually, it just started with a project, which is, it's unbelievable in a way, but it fell so nicely into place that the Institution for Foreign Relations in Germany kind of had this idea to start or launch an art magazine focusing on artistic production in Africa. And this was the main idea. They didn't have an idea, should it be, I don't know, what's the name, should it look like, what's the focus, but more like creating visibility for, the very diverse artistic production on the continent. And they approached us as art historians and writers and curators to kind of, come up with an idea and launch this magazine. And that's where we met the first time. So, and it kind of was love at first sight because it just, the experiences we both had, and it was all, it fits so very well from the beginning. And then we just, started from scratch. And maybe what's important again is that, as I mentioned, the IFA was really concentrating on artistic production on the continent. And we, from the beginning on, said, no, we can't separate this from the diaspora, obviously, because it's so, interconnected, etc. So that's why we said, if we do this, we want to have a focus on Africa and the global diaspora. And maybe we still think this is maybe the secret of the success of the magazine, that we never had
for sure.
And I think we were, in a sense, really lucky that we got this funding from the beginning, so that we actually had this idea to do that, because obviously it was something that was concerning us for a long time, after you heard now what was our trajectory, and that we were, in a sense, lucky that we got that funding and also complete freedom of what we do with that. And so that gave us the possibility to really think it through, to how the look should be. I mean, the name and everything. Obviously, we thought about all these things.
I love the name. The name is just fantastic. And I also think that the funding source is also, I'm not going to say that it's unique, but when I think about, the American paradigm, I'm not really sure that we would have the same type of funding available for an art magazine, and especially one, of course, that focuses on the global diaspora.
And you mean like state funded, or you mean state?
Well, that it would be like the type of initiative that actually brought the two of you together to work on this. I just don't. We have the National Endowment for the Arts. We have a lot of, a number of different funding agencies in the country, different foundations that fund. Scholars and thinkers who wish to do different kinds of projects. But I was actually going to ask, kind of like in thinking about this, is not a question that we discussed, but I was wondering if you might say something like, I'm thinking about, I don't really think that there is a comparable publication out there. The way that you, full on embraced being online, right? Wanting to have that platform because you wanted to be accessible, you wanted to be agile, right? And then I was thinking about Inca,
Yes.
And so I just kind of like, I don't even really know what the question is. I don't have a question formed, but maybe, What
Yeah,
did you say?
you just want to throw the name in. It's good. Yeah, we love
I don't
them.
know. I don't even. Yeah, I'm not even just trying to throw the name in, but I'm just kind of
Yeah,
like,
like,
well, your
mm,
Contemporary is much more accessible on so many different
yes.
levels.
Yeah.
And I think that, the writing that I've written for INCA before, and my
Mm,
colleagues are founders of INCA. But just in terms of, being an online platform, and also I think,
mm,
Julia, with your journalism
mm,
background, and together, that you have a scholarly enterprise, but the language is so accessible.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that we really very much consciously decided on from the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning. So this is also not a coincidence because we
No.
said if we do a platform like that, it has to be accessible, not in the sense only of being online, so that anyone from Lagos to Joburg to
Mm-hmm.
Sao Paulo can read it, obviously, but
Right.
also to make it something that is not only for the curatorial
Yeah.
experts, people in the arts world bubble, but also can actually be accessible to people that might be just interested, because of course there are a lot of people that are interested in arts, but they not necessarily, understand curatorial speak.
No.
And so
Yeah.
this was really clear from us from the beginning that if we start working with all these writers, because it's something we haven't said yet, but I mean, us in the team, we don't write the text. It's really, we're working with a huge network of people all over the place. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it was clear that, I mean, we don't have like an in-house style or
Mm.
something like the New York Times, but we do give out the briefing that the text should be written in a way that they're understandable, that they don't have sort of too many footnotes and things like that. So they're very purposely quite short so that people realistically can read them
And
and
understand.
in their
Yeah.
during their busy lives and still understand and take something from it. So because we really strongly believe that you can, sort of mediate really
Mm-hmm.
complex, important topics in an accessible way. I mean, we don't think that it has to contradict each other to talk about important issues and at the same time
No.
make it very accessible, really.
It's
Yeah,
more like a challenge to make very complex topics accessible and
It's
understandable.
more difficult for a
Yeah.
writer
I'm
also.
sure.
Be a good writer to be able to do that, actually.
Yeah.
It's
And the
really
other,
difficult.
yeah, and the other layer of accessibility, you mentioned it already, is the decision to really start online as a digital platform, and through that, um, you know, being able to be read all over the place as long
All
as
over.
And without any payment barriers,
Yes.
also.
Yeah. So therein lies the funding from the
Yes,
US
Yes,
exactly.
government.
this is another
Beautiful.
aspect of accessibility.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely. That was really
definitely.
important for us. And I mean, it remains important for us, and that's why we like we have become these fundraisers also, because we really think it's really important that it doesn't become a commercial magazine, because it's just really important for us that anyone, and also we have a really young readership, so the main
Yeah.
readership is between 18 and 35.
That's
So
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's nice.
amazing, and we love it. And I mean, obviously, that's not maybe the years where you have like the most money, so you shouldn't be,
Yeah.
have to spend it on these things that form you and inform you. And it's
Yeah.
the same with the print issue. You just put up the image there. So although we're embracing online as our major kind of medium, we just still like the analog
Mm.
stuff. So I still like books and magazines, of course. And so we decided also to do a print issue, I think 1 year after CN launched
Mhm.
online. And it comes out twice a year. And usually it's alongside a specific event. And then we focus on that event. And the idea really was, and you can see it there, that it's not a glossy, heavy magazine, but it's like this newspaper style.
It's like
Again,
newsprint. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
newsprint, and that was also a very conscious decision to say, okay, it's nice to have something in your hand, but it should be also easily distributed. It should be not too expensive so that we
yeah.
can distribute it for free. So the magazine print issue is also always for free, and should remain also that. And so to again think around this notion of accessibility,
Mm.
and I mean, when we do it along certain events like the Dakar Biennial or other biennials, we also always try to distribute it not only within the arts crowd, but actually beyond that. So it's actually distributed way, beyond the galleries or like the typical places where it would be. I mean, of course it's there, but always trying to, reach beyond that in a way.
And this
Right.
issue you're seeing there is was launched during the São Paulo Biennale 2016.
Nice.
And what is important as well, again, the idea of accessibility is that we never come to a place, to a country where, for example, in the case of Brazil, people speak Portuguese. We would never come and hand over a magazine in English only. So that's why this issue, for example, is like flippable. One part of the magazine is in English and the other one is in Portuguese. So, and we did the same with, for example, Senegal with Dakar. This was French, English, and so on. So this is always important.
And when you're online, you have other translations as well into German, right?
No, we
No?
don't.
No,
We
no.
did have at the very beginning because we got German government funding, but we somehow could convince them that we don't really need it because actually most people read it either in English or French.
Right.
So it's now the end is in English and French, and the end America Latina is in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And when did you launch CN America Latina? Was it 2016 with the Sao Paulo Biennial or after that?
No, but I mean, the Sao Paulo Biennial was kind of the starting point where we seriously thought about doing this.
Yeah.
So, and you can see here, like the other guys on the picture, it's like friends of ours from Sao Paulo who are running a magazine, Omenelik, which is a great magazine which has been working on Afro-Brazilian topics in the arts, not only visual arts, but also literature for a long time, doing very important work. And so we've been collaborating with them on that print issue, but also have been in, lots of conversations and exchange. It became so clear to us that these connections are so important also if we think around the diaspora, not only in Brazil, but also thinking around what's happening in Argentina, Colombia, Mexico.
Exactly.
And so that was really the point where we thought like, okay, let's try to bring this all together. And of course, then again, we need the language because, why should we do it in English only? Because we can't expect someone based in Brazil or wherever to
have
read
to
it
read in English.
Yeah. But that also meant that we kind of needed more space, like also online space. And that's why we said, okay, let's try and get the funding to do that. And it took a bit of time, and so we launched it in 2018 then to have that side, which is very close, of course, to what we do with the end, just like, shifting the focus a bit to those debates and exchanges.
Yeah.
And so could you say the web addresses for both platforms?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Or should we put it in?
I guess you could put it in the chat. Sure. That's great too. Yeah.
Maybe in talking about language, what is interesting as well. For you, the listeners maybe is that I think I mentioned it already that since the beginning, the start of the end, the main readers come from the US. That's really still for us, just an amazing thing, an amazing info, because we never really found out why we're so popular in the US. But
do you think it has? I don't know. I feel like it has something to do with the Armory show, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
No.
Or was it even before then?
Yeah, it was before that. So it was right from the beginning, since 2013, that the US has always been the strongest readership. Ever since, followed by, South Africa, Nigeria, Brazil, but Germany as well, and France. But that has always been very satisfying to us to see that satisfying to us to see that CN isn't a magazine addressing art-interested people from North America and Europe only, but that our top readers sit in South Africa, they sit in Nigeria, they sit in Senegal and Brazil as well, and obviously in Europe and North America as well. But or for example, we have many Spanish readers, and we found out that Spanish-speaking readers, and we found out that most of them, or many of them, sit in America. Which is super interesting, isn't it?
Wow. So hence
so
America Latina.
Yes, many of them are in, of course, Colombia, etc. as well, but very many of them sit in America. And we thought this is very interesting for us as well to understand that, or to see the dynamics, who's reading us and why, and so we're learning.
Yeah. I mean, I think it must be interesting to be able to have the kind of metrics that you might be able to get
Yes. Yes.
from an online platform.
Yes.
And so someone who's online said that's because we need the existence of your platform, and we're always in search of what we cannot find locally. That is true. That is
Yeah,
true.
that
Yeah,
is
it's
very true.
The other story, the other
Yes,
narrative.
yes, absolutely.
So you were quoted as saying, or there was a quote rather. I'm not going to necessarily say that it was you, but there was an interview in Hyperallergic around the time that you were doing the Armory show, where Contemporary And is discussed as a platform, a gateway, and an archive. And I thought that's a really kind of well-rounded way to talk about this really important transformational enterprise. And I wanted to ask if you could say something more about the archive. I think this image says a lot about the archive that you might be thinking about. And then I thought I might scroll over to another. Should I show a couple of other images?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, on the one hand side, over the past 7 years, CN has grown into this archive with all this content that has been produced. And it's also actually something we're working on right now to make it better accessible online, because, I mean, of course, you have a search option, but it's not really clear how much and how deep you can actually go with all the content. Because, I mean,
you mean deep into the archive of CN?
Yes, exactly. Because, I mean, we produce quite a lot. So we produce like around 2 new commissions per week, plus news and opportunities and so on. So you can imagine how much content that is over the course of the past 7 years. And it's also more and more that we get the feedback, for example, from universities that they use Contemporary And for if they, you know,
As a source.
as a source.
I use it in my
seminars.
Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so that's something we're very aware of. And that was also always the idea, that it builds up, that it becomes something that's very in the present. So we are like also this news outlet, and we do feature all these things, very important. And, you know, really, you know, feature also young artists and all these things. But at the same time, we also building and or contributing to building this narrative that hasn't been really there, or this writing, you know, that hasn't been really there. And so this is something that's really important to us, but also at the same time that you show the image now, it's also about how that kind of maybe bleeds into what we're doing offline more and more. And so we always say CN is really defined by the network of writers. That is what CN is. And so we also really are important to us. It's like really to work with young people and to share, and that's why we're also teaching at the university here in Berlin, and that's why we also started these critical writing workshops in different cities, where we just invited youngster art writers to come together and to work with senior tutors, just really skilled based, but also to have these conversations to talk about. I mean, if you are like based in Nairobi, for example, you don't have maybe the big newspapers that have huge cultural section like the New York Times. So what do you do? Where's your outlet? Does it make sense to have your own blog, or, you know, these kind of questions? Or what about censorship? And, you know, to really, build that space to be able to have these conversations, but also to, you know, build that network so that these youngsters, you know, get together. There are a lot of synergies that go beyond the end, really, as things that happens, you know. But also the idea for us that the workshops kind of are the start of working together. So not this typical thing that you do workshop for 3 days, everybody says like, oh, that was so amazing, and then nothing happens because everybody's busy and, you know, back to whatever. And so it's really clear or important for us that actually this is just meeting physically to get the energy of each other, but then continuing producing all that content. And this has been actually very inspiring, because there are a lot of people from these workshops who are still contributing on a regular basis to CN, but not only, also, you know, made the step to publish with a lot of other outlets through the networks that they built with the tutors or other writers.
And so when you hold the workshops, and I know this is all like, you know, pre-COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you traveling around to different locales? How do you decide where you're going to hold a workshop? Is there an application process? Is it something that,
Yes.
how do we find out about it if we have, because we're, as you know, we have undergraduate students at the
Yes.
AUC, and you very generously and beautifully addressed our students last week who are students who are in a virtual internship program to share contemporary and what you're doing. And also, I think your example in that, you know, you are curators, you are writers, you
Mm-hmm.
are, you know, entrepreneurs, you're teachers, and there are different ways that, you know, we can go out in the world and do our job, do the job of teaching,
Mm-hmm.
of educating, of sharing knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that what you've done with CAN and the different ancillary, I'm not going to call them businesses per se, I don't mean that, but
Mm-hmm.
ancillary platforms and outgrowths are really a great example to the way that I think people can be just, you know, moving about the world and really
Mm-hmm.
shaking things up.
Yes.
Um,
No, that's
so yeah, I was
what.
just curious if there were students, and I know that there are a couple of students on
Mhm.
today, but you know, if they can apply to a
Of course.
workshop, or maybe we need to have a virtual workshop with you at the
Yeah,
AUCR
maybe
Collective sometime this year.
maybe
Yeah.
there's interest because normally the picture you see there has been taken in Nairobi. That was the workshop we've been doing in Kenya, and there was another one in Lagos, one in Lubumbashi, in Democratic Republic Congo, and then this is us, the team. These
I
are
love
not young
this.
writers. This is the end. A part of the core team in Berlin. So yeah,
Yay.
and, the workshop we've been doing most of them in African cities so far. One we've been doing in Detroit as part of a project 2018 and 19, and it always goes through a normal application, open call process where people can apply, and we and the team, you know, select the 20 students to take part, and I think the digital let's to push it into the digital is interesting because we've been doing this already with a format called the mentoring mentoring program, where we kind of follow on what Yvette just said. After the 3-day workshops, everybody goes back into their daily lives, etc. And from there on, we pick like a selection of 5 mentees to work on like 6 month one-to-one trainings with senior tutors. And this
Mm-hmm.
happens only online because the senior tutor could sit in London or in Berlin or
Right.
in Oslo, wherever. So this is
Pre-COVID.
yes, this is pre-COVID, and
It's
we've been
still
doing
running.
this. Yeah,
It's still running. So
we've been doing this already for
since
the
3 years.
last. Yes, and
Since
it's really cool.
3 years,
And
yeah.
it's funny because like 3 years ago we thought, oh, it's maybe strange that they exchange their work on an article together, the mentor and the mentee, via WhatsApp, and it's strange, but we have to do it because
Yeah.
we're digital, and now it's like everybody does it. It doesn't feel
Right.
strange anymore for us. It's like
Yeah.
of course we've been doing this.
WhatsApp is secure.
Yeah, and we've been
Yeah.
doing it. So yeah, workshops maybe would work as well. So yes,
Yeah, and with
So
the
it
mentoring
kind of,
sorry.
oh, I
yes,
was just
yes.
going to say, it reminds me of, there's a project, I don't know if it's only US based, but I think it may be, it's called the Op-Ed Project. Have you heard of
Oh,
that?
yes, I heard of this.
And so it's a project that is, from the way I understand it, is to primarily work with, mentor, and sort of train academics to be able to write and speak in a way that's more accessible, and hence,
Yes,
write
yes.
op-eds. And so I know that it's this type of thing where it's certain select colleges and universities, there are just a few spots available for scholars to sign up for it. But and that's for any discipline, really, not just art or art history. So I just love that this is the platform for African diaspora art in the contemporary world. It's amazing. So you see, there's someone who's I don't know that, I can't make out the whole name. Roger uh,
Oh yeah.
Felix, who said
Yeah.
that, you
Nice.
see? Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Ah,
Ah, great. Hello.
hello.
Yeah.
Yes, that was nice. We love Brazil. We
Yeah.
have been there for,
Yeah.
yes.
So I
Yeah.
did want to say too, I know there's one question waiting in the question box that I can
Mhm.
address, and just to anyone else. You know, if you have questions, please pose them through the question function and we will get to them. So there's one question that asks, can artists contribute writing, and if so, how?
Of course.
Of course, I mean,
Mm.
when we say we work with a big network of writers, we mean everyone who wants to write. So it's not by profession that we
No.
define it. So we have lots of different people, artists, curators, performers that contribute text, and actually we're also very open to the format of the text as long as they are written accessible. I mean, we have also done already pieces that are reviewed that are more in a poetry format, or so we're also really interested in that. So we are really very open to any sort of pitches. I mean, of course, CN is a still edited platform, so I mean,
Very strict.
we are very strict. No, but also just to say, sometimes maybe if it doesn't work out because our editorial schedule is maybe already completely planned out, or because we have to be careful to balance our content, that we don't have too much stuff about South Africa because there's happening a lot there. And so sometimes, of course, maybe it might not work. That's when someone pitches something, but that doesn't mean that we're not interested.
No.
But we always also explain, sorry, maybe this time we can't take it in, but please, anyone is very welcome to always pitch things, and we're really open to all sorts of backgrounds, professionally seen, and
Yeah.
formats.
And obviously we pay fees, which is
Yes, obviously we
for
pay
us
also a
normal,
fee,
but
which
Well, that's
seems
great.
not always normal.
yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I was
pay
gonna
for
say,
everything. Yeah.
Yes.
a lot of academic writing, there's not.
I know, and this is always so shocking for us to see.
Yeah.
Like, what? You're not
Yeah.
paying the people who can produce your magazine? It's not.
Yeah,
It's
it's
impossible.
weird.
So no,
Yeah. So
we do it the old school way. We pay. We pay
That's
for
fantastic.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a magazine we launched last year, 2019, looking at 30 years of the end. How do you call it? The falling
Unification
the
of
unification.
Germany.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
fall
yeah.
All
wall.
of the war.
Oh, the
That's
wall.
the issue that you see there. Yeah.
Yes, and another
Yeah.
89. If you flip this page, it's an 8 on the other side, but you just see the 9. Another 89, focusing on the many alternative narrations and experiences by, a diaspora in Germany who obviously experienced the fall of the wall as well, but nobody, that was
Never in any of the popular
included in the
reporting.
Yes,
Exactly.
you never heard about these stories and experiences during these times, and still today. And that's why we focused this issue together with students on this topic only, and that was very, very, very interesting. So, and you can see it online as well as a PDF. On
Yeah, all
Contemporary
the
End.
print issues.
Yes.
So if you're interested, I mean, of course, we always try to distribute them as wide as possible and send them to institutions and libraries and so on. But all the print issues are also as PDFs on the website. So.
Oh, someone says I lived in Mainz for 8 years.
Yeah.
I was born in Mainz, just to let it
Side
go.
note.
But I've never
Remember
been.
mines.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
Apart from that, I can't say nothing about Mainz, but it's nice to see that you live in this.
And so if someone wanted to submit an idea for an article or an essay or their work
Yes.
as an artist, do they write to the editor at cn.com, or where? How
Yeah, it's all on the
Yeah,
website.
it's easy.
Maybe that's the easiest. So if you go
Like info@contemporaryand.com.
yeah,
is one
or
way.
but I mean all the emails are on our website.
Yes.
So there's the email of our coordinator and so on. So you can directly write to them. I mean, you can always also write to us, but sometimes it might be better to write to her because she then already has it editorial schedule better in view and all these things. So but we discuss all the pitches. We always discuss.
Double-checks with us.
She always double checks with us. So
yeah,
Great.
feel free and approach us. We need young good writers.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know that we don't have a whole lot of time left.
Yeah.
I just want to
Go
put a
so.
little time stamp on there. We've got kind of 10, maybe 12 minutes or so.
Okay.
But I wanted to ask a question about the wall of statements, and I'm not sure if I'm giving it the correct title, but your response to the global protests that are still gripping the world. I think that much of the mainstream news media might portray them as having been ended or dispersed, but I know that they are still happening. There's still vigils. There are still protests. And I just wanted to ask if you could say something about your choice to have a wall of statements and what the response has been.
Wall of voices, yes.
The
A wall of voices. I'm so sorry.
No problem. No
Now we
problem.
just felt like it was when the protest started, and then it also became this wave that came over to Europe, and all these demonstrations would happen, and all these institutions hectically trying to position themselves, also in Europe, of course.
Yeah.
And then we felt like it would be really great to have this one space to bring in together the thoughts and voices of all these amazing people that have been doing all this work since decades, you know. So because there was so much kind of also, at least in our context in Europe also, that people would talk about this current moment or something, you know, it's something that's just now.
But live if you're a Black person.
Yeah, it's not, you know, it's just an eruption of what has been there for centuries, basically. And so we just felt like it would be great to bring together all these voices with like short statements, just to have like one point where they come together, because I mean, a lot of people say great things on social media and so on, and just to have it, and we felt like it might become even more powerful to bring it together, but also to have a space for people to maybe go to and read through the things, because I mean, a lot of things that are on this wall are very beautiful and touching and empowering, and to just maybe have the possibility to have this one moment to look at this, and then to regroup for yourself also, or to feel inspired, or whatever someone wants to take with them from that. And also we felt it was important to make it a continuous thing, so because of course a lot of magazines have done their features and then it's kind of check, but it's something that is somehow still ongoing, so we always keep, you know, adding things by people, so to make the point also of saying, I mean, of course this is ongoing, and I mean, of course it's also the work we've been doing since ever, you know, beyond that, but also to make a point about that and to show that. And I think the response has been quite incredible by people, just feeling that this kind of, how you say that, how these energies come and focus together in a way, and to, although we all know that there are all these amazing people out there, it's just, you know, to see that again. And also we felt like at the beginning we started with people from the US, but then also sort of opened it up from people from the diaspora, but also being based on the continent, because this is also something often forgotten in the coverage in the media, that of course also someone in South Africa is very much affected by this, and
Absolutely.
So to also take that in and what that means.
And I think that it's the type of it's, I won't even call it, it's organic, it seems to me, because it is ongoing, and the perspective that you were able to provide through this, you know, through these multiple voices that are global, again, emphasizes how the work that you're doing has a global platform, and that it's specific, right? And I know that in any of the, you know, all the looking at, you know, whether it's different news outlets that are on, you know, online or whatever format, you don't really get that. You don't get that perspective. It's a different perspective. So for one, I just want to say thank you for that.
Your statement.
It's been uplifting at a time when we really need it.
And it's important to see that, you know, we had a few replies by people we approached who said, you know, I'm so hurt and I can't write anything right now. That was important to us as well, to, you know, to experience that many
to acknowledge that
couldn't write, or, you know, Thomas Bex has just sent abolition and love. That's it. So some people did some really long statements, and some just, you know, a poem or one sentence, etc. So that was very touching for us as well.
Yeah.
So,
Well, definitely.
no, thanks for bringing that up. It's
Yeah.
No, thank you. So can we talk about, we've got about like 7 minutes,
seconds.
maybe. No, not seconds, 7 minutes.
Yes.
And again, if anyone has a question, please throw it into the question box there. But can we talk about the Center of Unfinished Business?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just try. I mean, because we don't have too much time, we will just outline it. I mean, there are a lot of things to it, but just maybe to say that this is a kind of offline iteration of a series we have on CN, which is called Inside the Library, where we invite different libraries from, I don't know, Tanzania to London to actually kind of present their library, either by just outlining what they do or by bringing in a magazine, a manifesto, a catalog that's really important to them. Nice. And it came from that idea to say that there are, of course, all these also art historical narratives that are already out there. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, I don't know, in Europe would be the British Library or something, where you go to find all these resources.
Knowledge, yeah.
And then we were approached to whether we were interested to actually build a library, like an offline library, and thinking around the legacies of colonialism. And so we said, yes, but also it has to be, it's like, it can't be just, you know, putting together all these titles of books, which you can also find in the university library. It has to go beyond that. So what we did is that we, of course, also brought in books that look, you know, talk about post-colonial theories and so on, but also we thought, okay, what is it actually in a very subjective perspective, from our perspective, of course, where these legacies all play a role. So we brought in books from Wall Street, we brought books on hip-hop, on fashion,
expressionism.
German expressionism. So all these kind of layers that are, of course, very much connected to the present day of what the colonial legacies are. But we also brought in books like, for example, art history books that, you know, would be claimed in a specific context that they are all encompassing the canon and what the art historical canon is. But of course, not of course, but they are only focusing on Western art history. So we would bring in these kind of books and kind of to confuse maybe a little bit, because people often are confused, would say, okay, why, for example, is this book now in here? What has that to do with colonialism? But of course it has everything to do with colonialism, because it's showing those blanks in the narrative.
Right. It's like a trajectory.
Exactly, because you have these big books and they're completely ignorant of this huge amount, you know, of histories that are, you know, have been written beyond that. So there's a little bit the idea. So it's not really a library, it's more a reading room where you have these kind of coming together of books in a very associative way. This is also how they are being presented. So there's no catalog or list of books. And so we put them together, and usually it comes in connection with an invitation by an institution. And so it's a mix of us bringing in those books, but then also looking at the institution's archive or library and bringing out their books. And again, with this kind of view of problematic books, of books that show the blanks, maybe also of books that are interesting, and then kind of merging it.
Yes.
We have 1 minute and 20
seconds. Maybe this is the HKW, Haus der Kultur in der Welt. You know the picture?
By the way.
Just where?
Another picture?
No, this is the one that you're showing.
Yes. Yes,
you know? In Berlin.
So this
and so 1 minute.
Yeah, okay. And the aspect of accessibility, maybe to close this, the many layers of accessibility, which are so important to us, play a role in the center again as well. As Yvette said, you know, you draw so many more people into a reading room like this if you have books on hip hop, on fashion, on Wall Street, on art history, and and you know, giving the people the freedom to rearrange them the way they want. You know, not A goes back to A, but you can put the expressionism next to bell hooks, and you can just, you know, arrange and curate the way you want it
as an audience.
Yes, as an audience. And this is really that makes it so accessible and interesting to people. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. So
it's I just love that it's also your curators too. So it's like a archival curatorial access project.
Yes.
As well.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Funny how you whispered like 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much
Yvette.
for
Thank
inviting
you
us.
all, Lauren, Rachel,
really
and
enjoyed
we'll be
it.
in touch and see you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
Absolutely.
Thanks to the audience.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.